Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Nice to see so many of you here tonight on this beautiful evening. There hasn't been many of them, so thank you very much for showing up. Before we get started, I'd like to say that this meeting takes place in the traditional and ancestral territory of the Mi'kmaq people. We are all treaty people. Now, we'll get started with the approval of the agenda. There's a recommendation in front of us that council approve the agenda for May 14th, 2024, meeting as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Councillor Duggan, seconded by Councillor Mosher. All those in favor? Motion carried. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes. There's a recommendation in front of us that council approve the April 23rd, 2024 meeting minutes as presented. Is there a mover? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Birtles. Any questions? All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion carried. So, whatever that was. Okay. Okay. Is she up? Is she on? Okay. Excellent. Good evening, Councillor Sanford. Do you hear us?
I can. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you.
So we're on number 5 on the agenda, which is 5.1, a funding request from Lunenburg County Wheels, and we have a presenter here. It says Deborah Featherby. I was gonna say.
Am I on? Wonderful. Yeah, I'm not Deborah Featherby, obviously. Deborah, unfortunately, was in a very serious car accident less than 2 weeks ago, and she's in the hospital in Bridgewater recovering. She was air back to the city. It was pretty serious, and she's on the mend, but everything hurts. So I'm here in her stead, doing my best. Thanks for the chance to talk to you about Lunenburg County Wheels. My name is Harry Beach. I'm on the board of directors. I'm the treasurer of the organization. I have with me Jerome Tanner, who's our president and board chair, a native son of Lunenburg, I understand. In the past month, we've expanded our service into the town of Luneburg, and we're now serving this area on a daily basis, 9 to 5, 5 days a week. My purpose today is to raise your awareness of our service and of the community here, to answer questions and concerns or that you might have, to help you understand how we operate, and of course, seek your financial support for the ongoing operation of the Lunenburg County Wheels. So what is it? We are a rural transportation service. It's door-to-door, pre-booked, dial a ride, 5 days a week, 8 to 5. We serve anyone with a transportation challenge. Financial challenges, not everyone can afford a vehicle, or not anyone can continue to drive a vehicle when they might age out from driving, or for reasons of car repair or an injury. We can step in and help people get where they need to go. As I said, we serve anyone who needs a ride, not just seniors and persons with disabilities. We have 5 of our 6 vehicles that are equipped with wheelchair lifts, and we can accommodate motorized wheelchairs and scooters. We've also had 2 vans that are equipped with bicycle racks on the front. We serve everyone, and so someone who wants to take their kids out to ride the trails in the Mark on road bikes, we can fit 2 on the front and put a couple more in the back and take a family out and do that. We serve all of the MODL area, all of the town of Bridgewater, all of the town of Mahone Bay. It's low cost. It's not for profit. A one-way trip within Lunenburg and 6 kilometers around is $2.50. If you want to go to Mahone Bay from Lunenburg, that's $5. You want to go to Bridgewater or to New Germany, to Vogler's Cove, that's that's $7.50. So it's not expensive. we're fairly heavily subsidized, and we need to keep the fares low so that people who can't get where they need to go can get where they need to go. It's all about making it work. We have one full-time operations manager, a full-time dispatcher, and we have 10 drivers at the moment. 2 or 3 are volunteers, the rest are now paid. We are inspected as a commercial, all of our vehicles are inspected as commercial vehicles. We're licensed by the Utility Review Board. And we have, I said, 6 vehicles, four brand new ProMaster vans. One is a Toyota Sienna without a lift, and we have a Ford F-250 that's outfitted as a bus, also with a wheelchair lift. So that's our fleet. The Ford and the Sienna are older. The new ProMasters have been on the road for less than a month. And your mayor will be attending an announcement about that tomorrow. So we're not allowed to talk about much more about it than that at this stage. So where did we come from and how did we get to Lunenburg? 30 plus years ago, a group of citizens in Bridgewater saw challenges facing seniors in getting where they needed to go, shopping, out to social events, to visiting friends, and they started to drive people around with their own vehicles. Similar thing happened in Mahone Bay and probably happens here. And they decided to broaden it out. They worked with the Kiwanis Club, and for 32 years, they operated a bus in Bridgewater and 7 kilometers around it. And it was focused only on seniors and people with disabilities. That was a wonderful thing. It was a donation only type service. But it was a problem when we wanted to get funding from the provincial government because we didn't serve everyone. It was too focused, too specialized, too niche. I think they were misguided, but that's the way it works. But they were willing to help us plan to change our service. And when Bridgewater put in place a transit system that was on a route, and the ability to attract volunteers dissipated, it became very, very hard for us to see a viable future for what was called Senior Wheels at that time. But the provincial government stepped in and they provided us with a bunch of funding to help do some strategic planning and to develop a business plan. And we're in the beginning of the 3rd year of that plan now. A little behind schedule because we couldn't get new vehicles on schedule. It took almost 2 years from order to delivery. That's all been fixed. We're now here, we're everywhere. For the last year and a bit, we've been operating with the 2 in an area that didn't include Mahone Bay and Lunenburg and Riverport because there are just too many people there and we couldn't accommodate everybody with the 2 vehicles we had. So now we're here. We're in the 3rd year of a 5-year pilot, and we're operating with funding from the province, funding from MODL, from the town of Bridgewater, from the hospital auxiliary, from the United Way, from the Lions Club in New Germany and the Lions Club in Bridgewater, the Legion in Bridgewater, Michelin buys us tires, from small donors, and from bequests from the estates of people who have been well served by us and show their appreciation by making a financial contribution. And some of them have been quite significant over the years. And even as recently as this past year, we had a $10,000 one come in, and it really speaks to what we do and how we help people. So why should Lunenburg support Lunenburg County Wheels? Well, we bring your citizens to social activities, services, businesses where they need to go within the constraints of time, because we can't keep people employed 7 days a week to the wee hours of the morning from, we just have to be reasonable and manage our funds, but we can do a lot with what we've got. We prevent isolation and we help the mental health of people. If you can't drive anymore and you can't get where you need to go and you have to depend on somebody, you lose you lose your sense of independence. we help prevent that. It's a way for us to bring customers to your businesses. We have people in the month that we've been serving Lunenburg coming to your market, people coming to your hospital, going from your town to help care give their relatives in Mahone Bay. We have people coming and going, but not many yet. We've had 36 people in the first month out of 908 rides we provided in the month of April, from, well, the end of the first week of April when we came in here to the end of the month. Awareness is still growing. We've only been here a while. It will get much busier. So we are providing basically a transit service to a rural area. You're a town, but you're part of a rural area, and transit is a basic public service in my mind, and we think you should support us that way. Now, financially is important. Governance is also important. If we can have members of all of the town councils in the area on our board of directors, we would love that, because we can then serve people better. Attracting governance help is a challenge for every organization these days. And we also need you to, as representatives of the public, to let your constituents know that we're here and we're ready to help them get where they need to go. I think that's pretty much what I have to say. I'm more than happy to answer questions, and if I can't answer them, then perhaps Jerome can help me out.
Thank you very much. Does anyone from council have any questions? Anybody? No questions? I will say thank you very much for the presentation, and I just happened to be home yesterday doing some work, and I saw the van going up and down because I live up close to the hospital, and I saw the van go up and down twice in the 4 hours I was out. So it's nice to see it being around town, and we've all talked the talk about transit and how we need it. So it is very important, and I'm really glad to see it. I guess now I appreciate it more than ever. I have a parent that is currently not able to drive, so she feels she's lost her independence. My mom does. So this would be a way, if she didn't have a lot of her support people around, to help her get around. So I think it's a wonderful opportunity and a wonderful service you're providing. I will ask, and my council might not like this question, but are you here tonight requesting for funding?
I thought that our Deborah Featherby, who made the arrangements to come here, is our lead on fundraising, and I understood she made an application to you for $10,000.
There is that amount in your request,
Yeah.
but if you're, that's great. I just want to make sure that you're requesting that.
Yeah, we're requesting that. We're not requesting more at this time. We have a pilot project going on. We do have a line item for funds coming to us, that we're hoping to get from municipal government. We're not quite there yet, but we're close. And we are looking at down the road. The service may change. We might ask for different amounts, but at this stage, we're learning how it works. We're learning what works and how best to serve the people that are here, and we're going to adapt to make it work. It's new. We've got a lot of experience running a one bus operation in one town, but we're now serving a much broader area and serving 3 towns. So it's going to change. So we can do what we can do, but we will need your help to make it happen longer term.
Thank you, and I'm glad for the announcement tomorrow. And that's all we can say for that. But you've been in contact with JRTA, Joint Regional Transit Association? I think.
Yeah, we're a member of that. There are 20 organizations. I should say that we're the first in Nova Scotia. The second one was Community Wheels. They were modeled on us. We sowed the seeds. They're now all over the place, and now we're doing what others are doing. Someone learned from us. We're learning from them, and on we go.
That's great. I was at a conference, and I guess JRTA is trying to take little groups like you guys and eventually connect them all together so that we can get from, say, Bridgewater to Halifax for an appointment.
I think that might be a slightly different. There's a regional. It's called Rural Transportation Association.
The Rural Transportation Association, which are all basically like us, across Nova Scotia, and with our current license that we have now, we can travel anywhere in Nova Scotia. And that's sort of a next step for us, not to travel anywhere in long distance, but we take people from here to Halifax for appointments and things like that. And I just wanted to add too, is that, we take a lot of students as well to the community college in place in Bridgewater. And, we also take people, if you want to get your car fixed somewhere, we'll take you, pick you up and take you back. And, so we just don't serve a certain segment, we serve everybody.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I was just told here that I guess your application will go to the Community Grants Program, which we award in June, hopefully.
Okay.
So you'll hear from us in June, one way or the other. So,
Perfect.
okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to the next part of the agenda, which is number 6, which is public input and questions. We have 20 minutes allotted. Each person is limited to 3 minutes. Each person must state their name. Questions or comments are directed through the chair, and comments or questions are limited to items on today's agenda. So in saying that, I have 3 people that would like to speak tonight. So our first presenter is Allison Strachan.
Good evening, council, your worship. The item on the agenda that I'm addressing is the date. And it is because it is the day before your worship's birthday. So I wanted to wish you a happy birthday. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you very much.
We
And
do that in a small town.
there's no such thing as Freedom 55. They don't even do the commercials anymore. That's all I can say. Next on the list is Teresa Quilty.
Evening, your worship and council. I guess I should say happy birthday too, since not to be left out. So I just wanted to speak on the one of the items tonight. Oh, my name is Teresa Quilty. I live on McDonald Street, and the item I want to speak about is the minimum vegetation standards bylaw that is coming before you this evening. And I wanted to just say a couple of things because I've been very involved in the process. I've gone to everything that's been available in terms of public consultation. And you may also remember I was one of the people who spoke in support of the appeal. And so I am very glad that we've gone through this process. I wanted to say, first of all, that, well, kudos to Kayla Byrne for leading this process. I think it was a really excellent process. It was very much a collaborative kind of conversation that she facilitated, and we've had multiple opportunities to see everything. We were very clear and informed at every stage along the way, and all the information's been available. So I think that was great. I really appreciated that opportunity and what we went through. It also gave me personally insight into how difficult it is to write a bylaw, especially when you're trying to bring together different opinions, and you can't supersede the MGA, and then you've also got to deal with safety concerns and constraints, right? So I think that it was a great process, and I feel like it's a good bylaw. And I'd really like to encourage you to bring it forward for first reading. And I think there were lots of different opinions that were brought into it. I think what I understood, also appreciated from it. And also because Bruce Parks participated in the process, which I thought was great because, you know, it gave us also appreciation that ultimately the rubber hits the road with him or any other inspector, and he's the one who's got to have clarity. And he really expressed how for him, he's trying to do his job, but he needs to really understand very clearly what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so I think it was great that he participated as well. It was a really good back and forth dialogue. So yeah, I think it's a good balance of different opinions. And yeah, I'm hoping that it would be a really positive thing for the town. So thank you very much for supporting the process, and thanks to Kayla in particular for leading it, and I hope you'll bring it forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Next on the list, but before I go there, I saw some people come in after we brought this over to me. So if you missed the sign up, you can still put your hand up after Joel goes. And if you want to cut up and say something, you can, because we're within our limit. So Joel Weston is next on the list.
Mayor, council members, thank you for this opportunity to speak during the public input and questions period. I want to speak in regards to item 10.5, and I'm in favor of the recommendation to go ahead and award the tender for the looping of the water main between Morash Lane and Harbourview Drive. Those of us who live there, so I'm Joel Weston. I live on Harbourview Drive. I'm also the president and owner of Bow West Ventures, who owns 15 acres of undeveloped land at the top of Harbourview Drive. So I'm in favor of this because we do have water issues, water pressure issues at the top of Harbourview Drive, down below on Morash Lane and on Duff Street. It also is necessary for me to take the development further with the land that I own. I have to have water for that development to go forward. And also the fire hydrant that's closest to me has issues with the availability and water pressure. So that will be great that will be working 100%. I'm also happy to see that it's Rick Jack that is being recommended for this tender, since I know them to be experienced, reputable, and also a local contractor to Lunenburg. So that was all for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Joel. Does anyone else from the floor want to get up and say anything? Okay, thank you. So we'll move on into number 7, which is correspondence. And it's basically for correspondence, except there is a recommendation there for 7.4. Access Awareness Week 2024, Lunenburg County Accessibility Advisory Committee. So there's a recommendation there that council proclaim May 26th to June 1st, 2024 as Access Awareness Week in the town of Luneburg. And the council approved flying the Access Awareness Week flag at the UNESCO Monument flagpoles during this week at the UNESCO Monument flagpoles. So there's a recommendation. Is there a mover? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councilor Bertels. Any question or discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. So moving right along to number 8, which is public hearings, public information. We have an encroachment license appeal today in front of us for 7 McKenzie Street. So first we'll call the appeal to order. So next we're going to go to the presentation by the administrator. So go ahead there, Hillary.
Good evening, everyone. For the record, I'm Interim CAO Hillary Grant, presenting this evening on behalf of the Department of Community Development. Mr. Cummings has appealed the town's development officer's decision to refuse his landscaping plan appended to this evening's council memo. The encroachment license application was refused because legal counsel has advised that, as currently written, the town's encroachment bylaw does not allow development officers to approve what is being asked. It only allows development officers to approve existing encroachments and those needed for accessibility under the building code. None of what Mr. Cummings is requesting is required under the building code. An encroachment license is permission for a party to build on town property. Allowable encroachments seek to balance giving individuals permission to build what they want on town land and protecting the public interest, such as the ability to provide essential services like power, water, and snow clearing. I want to stress that planning staff's decision to refuse was not based on the merits or aesthetic appeal of this plan or the merits of this plan compared to the many others Mr. Cummings has submitted. The decision was purely based on the encroachment bylaw and its division of authority. Staff reviewed the town's bylaws and all the research conducted in preparation for the September 12th appeal in the hopes of avoiding another refusal and appeal, but came to the same conclusion that there is no bylaw that allows staff to approve residents installing retaining walls and landscaping on town property. Council should carefully consider whether they want to give residents this ability. If council grants this appeal, as they did the last appeal, they will be voting contrary to their own bylaw. Staff recommend that if council would like to see residents have greater ability to build on and landscape town land, they should direct staff to review the treatment of streets and streets right-of-ways. Staff recommend that this happen after the parking and traffic study is complete to avoid staff duplicating WSP's efforts. As you know, the parking and traffic study was part of the 2023-2024 budget passed over a year ago and was not initiated as a result of this appeal. Mr. Cummings was kind enough to provide his speaking notes in advance. He's posed several questions and requests, and I'd like to do my best to answer these questions as this information may be germane to council's decision. One request is for a list of residents that have had similar provisions placed on their licenses. The town has issued approximately 15 encroachment licenses. 3 are for temporary street furniture outside Old Town businesses. 2 are for accessibility ramps required under the building code. And 10 legitimize existing encroachments that predate the encroachment bylaw. All of these are allowed under the encroachment bylaw as it currently stands. The town has not issued any encroachment licenses for new landscaping or retaining walls, so there is no precedent to this case apart from council's September 12th decision. Staff have refused similar applications for encroachment licenses, for example, for a new step on town property, because it was not required under the building code. The recommended provisions are at the town engineer's suggestion. Even if council approves the appeal, the town engineer still needs to approve the final license. The recommended provisions are primarily for clarity. Public Works places flags on town items like fire hydrants to similarly protect the fire hydrants from snow plows and the plows from fire hydrants. Public Works often advises residents to make, for example, steps more visible to snow crews to avoid them being damaged. The town can hold anyone who damages town property responsible for fixing it, regardless of if it is in an encroachment license. Again, this provision is largely for clarity. I beg your patience as I have 2 more points of clarification. Starting June 2nd, 2023, Mr. Cummings submitted many different designs to staff for consideration. On August 9th, Mr. Cummings withdrew them and asked staff to focus on the design that was later appealed to council on September 12th. Mr. Cummings then submitted a revised design as part of his appellant correspondence. However, the appeal process still focused on the August 9th design because that was the design and the decision being appealed. Council did not specify it was approving an alternate design in their motion and thus approved the August 9th design. However, staff would still have to refuse this landscape plan regardless of what plan was approved for a license on September 12th because it is different from both the previously submitted designs. While the applicant feels these are non-substantial changes, any design changes need review and approval, whether they are substantive or not. Licenses and permits are not an approval in principle of a concept or an idea. Licenses and permits approve very specific designs. This is true in almost all areas of planning. For example, every development permit issued under the land use bylaw and every certificate of appropriateness issued under the Heritage Conservation District Plan and bylaw says on it that any changes require submission of revised plans and town approval under an amended permit. Many residents want to increase the numbers of trees in Lunenburg. However, in the past, when residents plant trees on town land, there can be disagreement on who owns the tree, especially when a tree needs to be maintained or, unfortunately, cut down. This is why the town established the tree planting program. Residents request that a tree be planted on town land near their home. Public Works reviews the submissions and plants the trees. Public Works considers items like height, relative power lines, and root systems, relative underground services when choosing what trees to plant where and endeavor to plant native species. Staff are recommending Mr. Cummings' tree request be treated the same way as any other resident request by being a part of the tree planting program. This is a competitive program, and so there is no guarantee that Mr. Cummings' request will be successful. However, last year, we were able to accommodate 41 requests, with more requests being accommodated this spring. Staff had not approved Mr. Cummings' request for a tree, but did say we would consider the possibility of a more mature tree for Mr. Cummings under this tree planting program. Thank you. I appreciate your patience and for listening to this report.
Thank you, Hillary. Now for the appellant. Is he online? Okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Yeah. So as council and the mayor have had a chance to review what I provided in terms of my comments prior to this meeting?
Yes, we'd have received that last week sometime. So thank you.
Okay. So I know Hillary just went through a bunch of information, including the many plans, and she said many that I submitted to planning, because in every case I got a no. And so my attempt here in the September 9th, she's saying August 9th, but that was a version of the plan that I presented before, taking to heart what planning was telling me, and that is their concern about the amount of items that I would be putting on town land. So I had excessive pathways, or what they considered excessive pathways, on that August 9th plan. And so I proposed in my appeal to reject that August 9th plan in favor of the plan on page 58, which removed a lot of the excessive pathways. So I do want to say this, that I do have an email from Lauren Isabel on the 25th of September. I didn't realize I had it until today. That does confirm that she/planning believed that the item on page 58 was approved by council and was willing to proceed with getting the recommended signatures for it, but I wasn't ready with a landscaper. And so I would like to say that I'm here to get reapproval of the plan, because apparently because it differs somewhat, and the somewhat is that the landscaper has provided some suggestions, because when I put that plan forward, I am not a landscaper. So I am here to get reapproval of the slight changes. If you'll see Appendix A, to the left is the item that was approved per planning on page 58. And then to the right is what I have now. And then below it are all the items that are changes, which are, like I said, substantially, nothing the council should be concerned about. And then I would like to also direct, because Hillary made a comment to me in email, and I believe it was on one that was that council was copied on, that I am unique, that my property and what I'm requesting is unique for residents of Lunenburg. And that point I was making, that shows the zoning map and the fact that almost every property in Lunenburg is bounded by town land, which means their landscaping, their lawns, any retaining walls, their driveways, their pathways are all on town land, not all on Town Mountain, but some of it is. And the fact that people aren't coming to planning and asking for these changes are because I believe they don't know, as I didn't know. I only knew that I had to do this because I had other permits that were going through planning and they told me it needed to be done. So I do want to go through these other items that Hillary brought up about the tree and the marker and the damage to the gutter. But first, I would like council to address the fact that they did approve item 58. I have that in writing by a town employee in planning, that the changes that we're making now be approved on top of what was done on September 12th, because apparently nobody in planning can do that, only council can. And that somehow, some way, town council, direct or otherwise, issue a directive that would allow a review of the bylaws, because every single person that, I just heard about a deck that was not approved because it was on town land. We as residents, we are bounded by town land, and your town land bounding us also binds what we do to our properties, to improve our properties, to improve resale value, to improve assessed value, which you benefit from taxes. And someone's missing the mark here if they think that we're out there as residents trying to build nuclear power plants on our properties and do wrong to the town. So outside of this, I think, from what I can tell, you all have approved this before. I'm asking you to approve the slight changes. But if someone can get with planning and help be more clear about what we as residents can do to town land, because it is absolutely impacting every single one of us. And I don't know who this deck was, but I'm sure it's a drop in the bucket if people actually knew that they had to come in front of council every time they wanted to do something to a driveway that crosses town land, to a pathway that crosses town land, or is so close for them to put a retaining wall that they won't allow it because it's 3 inches over. My entire planning process, permitting process with this town has been an absolute nightmare. My neighbors can attest to it. My contractors can attest to it. They have the ability to do exceptions, but they won't. They're completely black and white. And what they're asking you to do again is black and white. This should never have come to town council. You all should be focusing on more important things than what I do with my freaking yard. And I get it, it's on town property, but at the end of the day, all town residents are impacted by this decision. Anyway, I apologize. I would like council to get that out of the way, and then I'd like to address Hillary's 3 other items that were also brought up as new conditions under this appeal, in addition to the ones that were done on September 12th.
Okay, so basically you get to make your presentation, Mr. Cummings, and then council gets to ask you questions, and then we'll make it, we'll close the deal. So you have to make your complete presentation now before, it's not like a back and forth, so just continue, sir, if you'd like, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, so the only other 3 items were well, first of all, the traffic study, that's actually a 4th. It seemed that a traffic and parking study was being attempted to be attached to my license request. I just want to make sure that as part of this decision today, council specifically, whether it decides to go through with it or not, detaches that study from anything happening with this license, and that my license request not be in any way impacted by a traffic and parking study. And then I did ask for a list, and I say this because every time I go to planning, there seems to be something new they're asking of me. And perhaps in this process, I've been a little less, I'm nice, I'm transparent, but difficult maybe because I don't always agree with the bylaws. But at the end of the day, this request to fix a gutter or pay for a gutter And this request for, and I did ask my landscaper what this marker was, because I've never seen any marker to denote where your land is by any of the residents. It just seemed like another attempt to put another requirement on me as a resident. And I'm fine to do that. But if it's the first time they've asked, and apparently it is because nobody else has had this kind of request before, they're putting it on me, and it wasn't part of the original appeal, which you all did appeal. I asked that you outright reject this as an additional term or condition for the appeal, for both the marker and the gutter requirement. My landscaper should be online, but there's no way it's in my best interest or his to in any way damage a gutter that's directing water past my property. So I think we're going to take the care that's needed. Putting it in there is just kind of inflammatory.
Okay, is there anything else you'd like? That's it? Okay, so now, thank you very much. So now I'll go back to my colleagues. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cummings? Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Cummings? Okay, seeing no questions, I will close the appeal hearing. And now there are recommendations and suggestions in front of us. So there's a recommendation number one that council can grant or refuse the appeal of the encroachment license for 7 McKenzie Street. So basically we can make that recommendation and discuss it if we want. That would be the proper way to handle it. So is someone willing to make a recommendation on that?
Just for clarification, Your Worship, there's another suggestion down in this package here. Is that, where, the appeal is granted through, but, the owners are going to take on the expenses of any, repairs or maintenance that we ever have to go in there on that property for.
Yeah, I'll apologize. When we passed this on September 12th, to be quite honest with you, that was my first official meeting as mayor, so I was a little overwhelmed with the evening, but I had thought at that time, the appellant agreed at that time, if we allowed him to build on our property, that if it had to be removed to get at the water main or whatever we had to access, it would be it. Yeah, we do it, but we're not putting the property back to as is, because it's, that was the risk you take, and I thought that Mr. Cummings had agreed at that time, but I could be totally wrong. So I guess I'll ask Mr. Cummings on that. Was that your agreement, Mr. Cummings?
100%. And what I would say is the thing that I have a problem with is calling out a gutter. And I don't know if you've seen the conditions of the gutters in this town, but they're almost as nice as the streets. And I'm not being kind, but the fact that they're calling out something that could or could not happen, not defining what the damage is, and not defining, almost leaving it open for them to come out and do excessive oversight for something that may or may not happen. It seems inflammatory when it wasn't something that came up on the last appeal. But my point is, or was, I accept if council, if the town has to do something on their property that happens to sit in front of my property, and they disrupt something, my landscaper will come out and fix it. 100%. So I'm still in agreement to that. I just take exception to the fact that it's almost a dig. Yeah, while you're doing this, if you damage the gutter, you're going to pay for it. Of course, I've already agreed to that.
Okay, thank you for your long version of the answer. It was just a question, I think, by Councillor Moser, but I think we're trying to get some answers here that we could possibly see it in everybody's best interest that we help you out here. So that's what I think we're trying to get to, that we can do it and that we can all agree to do it, that nobody's going to be, at fault down the road. So thank you for your answer. Thank you, Councillor Moser. Is there any other questions by colleagues at the table? Councillor Moser.
Just one more regarding the tree, and I guess that would be through to Tyson. Is there any apparent infrastructure there that tree may, impose on?
Through the chair, Mr. Cummings' water and sewer service would both come out through the front there. and tie in on McKenzie Street. So so there's those services to consider. And then there's also the overhead wires that are directly above, running along the Mr. Cummings side of McKenzie Street. So it's those kinds of things we need to consider. Under wires, the electrical utility provides recommended species of trees when it comes to the tree planting program that the interim CAO discussed during the staff report.
Can I add on to that, please?
Sure, go
My
ahead.
my landscaper is, I think is online. He's reviewed this. The tree roots aren't a problem. The height was chosen not to interfere with the telephone lines. The only thing nearby, and I think I planted the tree in between the sewer coming into my home and the water coming into my home. But at the end of the day, I gave this to Lisa. I've been in contact with Lisa. I asked Lisa if I could purchase my own tree so it doesn't have to come out of the town's budget, and because I want a mature tree. I thought, and I have an email that seems to suggest that Lisa is okay with that, including my reply where it said I said I would pay for it. The fact that we have a town engineer commenting on a tree for a front yard, a little odd. I didn't know that was a specialty. But again, I know I've got anger here. You have to understand what I've been through for the past year with planning, trying to get things done. And we have what I think is the most ludicrous thing coming through council when you guys have more important things to deal with. So I have anger, absolutely I do. But I'm looking for a tree that will provide privacy. It's in my notes. And I'm asking that, and Lisa was okay with it. I'm asking, let me plant the tree, please. If you need to take the tree out at some point for whatever reason, or cut it or whatever, fine, it's on your property. But please let me plant what I would like to plant and beautify the neighborhood, fix the damage to my driveway. I mean, there's so much that's going on here that shouldn't be in front of council. But again, go ahead. I apologize.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Cummings. And moving forward, if you have any other questions, let's try to keep it as professional as possible. It's no sense taking shots at staff, and we don't have to throw anyone's names out there moving forward. We just move forward in a professional manner. And like I said, I think we're around this table trying to help you here. So just give us a little bit of respect back, please, sir. So any other questions from the people at the table? Any other questions from my council? Okay, seeing no other questions. Is anybody prepared to move the recommendation in front of you? It's been moved by Councillor Mosier. Is it to grant or refuse the appeal?
I couldn't hear Councillor Mosier.
Yeah, I would move that recommendation as long as it's well documented that the town can encroach on that on our own property to service any infrastructure that would need to be done, and it would be at the homeowner's expense to replace whatever damage was occur.
Okay, so the recommendation was moved. Is there a seconder for that recommendation? Seconded by Councillor Duggan. Any discussion on the question? Seeing
Can I
no.
ask? I'm
No,
sorry,
it's
Mr.
no, the
Chairman.
appeals closed.
Okay.
We're not voting, okay? So we have a motion, moved and seconded, no more discussion. All those in favor of granting the appeal, raise your right hand. All those opposed, raise your right hand. Motion carried, trying to count how many of us are here. 5-1 with Councillor Birtles voting in the negative. Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Cummings, your appeal was granted, so he's gone. Okay. Let's talk to myself. So do we move on to the second recommendation at this point, or do we pass? Okay, so then there's a second recommendation that we're going to do we can do that council directs staff to, upon completion of the traffic and parking study, review all bylaws and policies governing town streets, including street rights of way, and prepare a report for council. Is there a mover for that? Moved by Counselor Moser, seconded by Deputy Mayor. Any discussion on that recommendation? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carried. So business arising from the minutes. We have the 9.1 town operating budget. There's a recommendation there in front of us. Is there any report from anyone on staff at this point or any questions? We've had to.
Thank you, Your Worship. It was just a brief cover report following up from Council's presentation by staff on the April 23rd meeting. Oh, excuse me. So following that presentation, staff considered Council's suggestions, which were outlined in the cover report prepared for this evening. Overall, the budget has increased by $40,000 to keep the old fire hall building condition assessment, which is offset by potential parking meter revenue, which staff will monitor before undertaking the assessment. And also the other change was that the public washroom budget has been adjusted to accommodate being open an additional month this 2024 season. There are draft motions, as Your Worship has mentioned, for Council to consider this evening, with tax rates, as previously noted, with no increase over last year, and sewer rates that have been increased by the CPI of 4%. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll start. Is there any questions around the table from anybody? I guess I have one or two minor questions that sort of came up at the very last minute tonight. One is, can we pass this budget and still find the money somewhere for number one, the Lunenburg County Wheels funding request? Because they're asking for 10,000, and I think that's basically what's in our grant amount or more, actually. So, you know, I don't think we could give them that kind of money out of that account in June, even if we wanted to, with the way the budget looks right now. And number two, we have, you know, the gazebo down here behind me is now subsequently closed off because it's condemned or it's in bad condition, and that's going to take some money to fix. And is there any way to find money to fix that with through our funding?
Through the chair, certainly we can look into how to accommodate those items. As people around this table are aware, and some of the public may be aware as well, the Civic Square redesign project did include an assessment, tender, and estimate for the work of restoring the bandstand. So we'll have a much better sense of what that work will actually cost upon the completion of that study. I would not recommend postponing the operational budget to wait for that assessment. Funding requests are best considered under the Community Grants Program. That program is very popular and it is competitive, but certainly moving around 5 figures in the budget would be very difficult at this time.
Not that I want to delay passing the budget, nor can I delay passing the budget, but I guess I have an issue more so, I guess with both, but more so with the funding request for transit than anything. If we're saying, you know, we should be doing something, I don't know what that is. I don't want to see us raise the taxes, but there has to be some way within our budget that we can possibly get staff to go back and look at ways to possibly find money to help with that transit system. We've all talked the talk at this table, at least I have since I've been here, and I've heard many of you before say transit's very important. They're asking for 10 grand, which is really not that much for a transit system like they're hoping to provide. So I was kind of hoping we could go back and look for some, you know, some type of funding, because the way I see the budget, you know, we're going to be lucky to be able to give them $1,000 at most if we could find it out of the grant program with all the other requests there. So I guess, is there any other options? I do think our deed transfer line item in the budget is low. It's been low the last couple of years, and I don't think sales have slowed down. So we might be able to take it out of that in future. But I'm just asking the question because I would hate to see us go back to Lunenburg County Wheels and say, sorry, great idea, we love it, but we can't give you anything to help it out.
Certainly, Your Worship, if you wanted to consider increasing the detransfer revenue that is associated with the operating budget by $10,000 and considering that grant request through there, that could be, there is a potential risk, that detransfer operating number obviously is built from history from staff and we tend to be conservative in that because obviously we don't want a huge downfall at the end of the year if things do change, because as we know, things can change suddenly that none of us are prepared for. We only have to think back to the early COVID days. But $10,000 is not a significant risk. And so if council wanted to consider that, that could be accommodated in the budget, yes.
Okay, well, thank you. I'd love to see us consider something like that. I don't know if we consider it this time or we wait until June and consider it during grant time, or how we do that.
If I may, Your Worship, if council wants to increase that revenue number so that there is a potential to approve that grant later on, we would need to do that this evening. So we would just need to modify the motion slightly. So instead of 10,865,000, it would be 10,875,000. And then the rest of the motion could go as forward, and staff would make that adjustment in the final version that's released.
Excellent. So we're just raising a number that we're really guessing on anyways, or estimating on with the income revenue side, based on previous years.
Yes.
Yeah, but based on previous year's figures, but we've always been low in our budgeted numbers, looking back over the last couple of years.
The
'Cause-
last 2 years,
Yes.
yes, the revenue has been higher than the budgeted amount. That is
And
correct.
I think real estate's still pretty strong right now in town, so I can't see that number dropping, but I could be wrong, so. Yeah. Anyone willing to change that number, or are we gonna leave the budget as is? I mean,
I'm willing to make the change. Do I need to read the motion?
I think, Your Worship, if I may, yes, if you're willing to change the amount, you can just change it in the motion and read out the motion as moving on.
I approve I'm looking to be approved the 2024-25 town general operating budget as presented, totaling $10,875,000 with the following tax and sewer rates.
so there's been a motion made from the recommendation in front of you with a little change in it. Is there someone willing to second that motion? Councillor Sanford?
I'll second it.
Okay, seconded by Councillor Sanford. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Any further discussion on the budget in front of us? Okay, at this time, we'll call for a motion. All those in favor of the budget the way it's presented, raise your right hand. All those opposed, thank you very much. And again, I want to thank staff for taking an incredible amount of time going over this, coming back after the last meeting, going through and making the minor changes that were brought up at that time. I think it was great to see that staff and council were actually listening to the public presentations and took them serious and got staff to come back with some changes. So thank you very much again. Job well done, folks. So now we're at 9.2, water utility operating budget. There's a recommendation that council approve the 2024-25 water utility operating budget as presented, totaling $1,759,100. So that's a recommendation. Is there a mover? A move by Councillor Duggan, second by Councillor Mosier or Sanford. They did it at the same time. So any discussion on the motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, thank you very much again. Thank you very much, staff again. So now we're going to move on to new business, which is the minimum property vegetation standards bylaw. There's going to be an introduction report, and then there's a recommendation, and we can discuss it at that time. Just for information only, this isn't a public hearing. This is just a new business in front of us. So just so everybody in the audience knows that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. So tonight we're presenting an introductory report on the proposed minimum property vegetation standards bylaw. Everything I present is always a mouthful, which is within the agenda package. The intent of the introductory report is an opportunity to facilitate council discussion, allowing for questions and inputs on the draft bylaw before it potentially moves forward for first and second readings at future meetings. The draft bylaw initiative began following a council directive from September of last year to draft a lawn and park naturalization policy. This directive was influenced by a property owner's appeal against an unsightly premises remedial order, where they discussed their lawn naturalization efforts. Conversations with our dangerous and unsightly property administrator, who had issued that remedial order, highlighted that there was a lack of clarity in handling complaints related to lawn naturalization, which prompted the need for this bylaw. The draft bylaw was developed through public participation initiatives, including a bylaw co-design workshop, which was attended by 24 residents and 3 staff members. A key outcome of this engagement is the view that the town should avoid regulating lawn aesthetics, recognizing that beauty is subjective. In response to that, the bylaw focuses on hazard prevention rather than aesthetic control. It addresses safety and health concerns like managing dry and flammable vegetation, controlling noxious weeds and invasive species, and controlling possible pest infestations. This ensures the bylaw supports a safe, healthy, and environmentally responsible community without enforcing those subjective standards. Notably, the bylaw does not impose a turf grass height limit, recognizing that turf grass does not inherently pose a risk if it does not contribute to specified hazards. While turf grass lawns are not considered naturalized areas, the bylaw allows a 2-year transition period for properties to develop their lawns into more ecologically beneficial landscapes. This period accommodates change that might not immediately reflect intentional landscaping plans, recognizing that naturalization takes time. The bylaw, as it's currently drafted, primarily serves as a clarifying document on handling lawn aesthetic complaints and is mainly enforced on a complaint-driven basis, in line with the town's existing practices. That being said, if something does pose an immediate hazard, staff have the opportunity to issue a remedial order or to take action if there is an immediate hazard. Additionally, public feedback has prompted suggestions outside the bylaw scope, such as education and support, naturalizing public areas, signage for naturalized areas, and further incentives for naturalization. These suggestions are detailed in the report, and draft recommendations have been provided in the report if council wishes to act on any other actions. In closing, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and if council agrees with the report, we are recommending that you move forward with the first reading of the bylaw at the next council meeting and direct us to come forward with any other recommendations that might be related to this bylaw.
Thank you, Kayla. And again, thank you to staff and thank you to the residents that attended all the sessions. I understand it went very well. So thank you, everybody, for participating. So is there anyone on council that has any questions or comments at this time? Councilor Mosier.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Kayla, I've no issues with the bylaw as it's presented, although I do think it's lacking one requirement that for me to support it thoroughly, I would like to see there. And I think that in order to naturalize your property, you should have to attain a permit from the town. And with that permit would come a plan. And that way, and if any future, complaints come in or, anything that may, warrant an inspection, then you can always revert back to the plan and you'll know if you're in compliant or you're not.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments on the bylaw? Councilor Sanford.
I would have to, and I'm just processing Councillor Mosier's comments, I would have to agree with, I like that concept of a permit. And when I think about the enforcement, it would again support and facilitate through a bylaw officer the enforcement. And the onus would be on the individual to follow the plan that they would have submitted, as opposed to the information that we're currently looking at puts the onus on, I've folks everywhere from the volunteer firefighters to staff and so on. So I like Councillor Mosier's suggestion about applying for a permit in that context and submitting a plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions from council? I'd just like to add that I think I don't want to see a fee of really associate it with the permit process, but I think the permit process is a good way to be able to control it. And actually, if there is a complaint, because it's going to be complaint driven, that the person can go back and say, look, this is what they're doing. This is how it's progressing. It'll eventually look like this. So I do tend to agree. It's hard to enforce if we don't know what it's supposed to look like, I guess, in the end. But that's why I sort of like that part of it. But I don't want to see any fee associated with it if we put it in there. I don't think it should be a fee structure thing. And I as well have no problems with the minimum standards that if the recommendations brought forward here. I'd support that at this time with maybe the possible addition of the permit system. But again, I'd ask staff if that was discussed at any of your sessions at all.
So I would note, again, this was a unique process where we did request a co-design process. So we intentionally invited the residents to come together and put what they wanted to see in this bylaw. And what we overwhelmingly heard was that the town should not be regulating aesthetics. And there should be more freedom for what people can do to their properties, in the sense that these are not built form. If something were to become a problem, it's really quick and easy to resolve that problem. We even reached out to a local real estate agent to ask if it really does devalue neighboring property values. And it doesn't, according to this local real estate agent. Because again, if something were to become so overwhelming, perhaps, it's really quickly to go and fix that. I would note that we've done a lot of research into this project, and a lot of the inspiration we've taken from is from Ontario municipalities. And notably, the City of London in Ontario had put together a similar bylaw, and they had a plan and permitting system, much like the ones you're discussing right now. And they're actually back at their table to repeal that process because the residents overwhelmingly came out and said it was much too restrictive. So they put a lot of work into that process, and now it's been scrapped and they're starting from square one. But again, up to whatever council directs, we can accommodate any edits. But I would like to note that the intent of this bylaw and the co-design, it was very much developed with those who chose to come out and participate in it.
Thank you. Any other, Councilor Moser?
Well, my intent isn't to restrict anybody to do what they want to do. They're free to do what they want to do. My intention is that they do what they say they're going to do. Just like if I want to put a deck on my house, I have to apply for a permit. And if I say I'm going to build a 10-foot deck on and I put a 30-foot deck on, well, you know, there's a problem with that. And that's what I see this doing, is just saying, here's my plan to naturalize my lawn. And if there's someone else that doesn't understand what they're doing and there's a complaint put forward, at least then you can deal with it in a factual manner instead of, you know, having a room full of 35 experts on each side and nobody agreeing what to do. You've already said you're going to do this, and then you proceed to do what you say you're going to do.
Thank you. Any other comments from the floor? Okay, there is a recommendation, or there's recommendations we can make in front of us. The first one, because we have to direct staff to come back if we want to come back here and actually make this into a bylaw. So is someone prepared to move that first recommendation, which is that council direct staff to bring forward the minimum property vegetation standards bylaw for first reading at the next council meeting? You can put that in your.
I would do that. Then I would suggest that we bring the bylaw forward for the next meeting with suggested change of having a permit attached to proceeding with naturalization of your property.
So there's been a mover. Is there a seconder to that? Seconded by Councillor Sanford. Any further discussion on that motion? Seeing no other discussion. So all those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carried. Now there's a possible addition to any recommendation, or we can make a further recommendation to the notes below. Is anyone interested in going deeper into this, or are we fine where we're at? I'll just ask. This is the time to. We're all good. Okay, everyone good? Okay, so we're going to move on then. So that has been passed to go back to staff. I will tell you, if you keep the dates in front of you for the proposed readings, so the reading and the public hearing, I'll be in Calgary. So I'm not trying to sneak out. I'm going to represent the town. So if you want to change the dates, whatever, I have no problem being here for the public hearing. But right now I'll actually be in Calgary for that. So just want to let my colleagues and the public know that I'm not just hiding home that night. So thank you. Move on to number 10.2, repealing of policies. Just a notice here, there's a recommendation that council give notice to repeal the following Town of Luneburg policies. There's a bunch there in front of you. It's basically a lot of housekeeping and repetitive things there. Is there any one want to make that recommendation? Moved by Councilor Bertels. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Deputy Mayor. All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed. Now there's a special events policy amendment request that council, a recommendation that council amend Lunenburg Royal Canadian Legion Remembrance Day event in Appendix A to community supported events of the special events policy to read Lunenburg Royal Canadian Legion Memorial Ceremonies. So does someone want to explain that? Hillary?
Good evening. Again, for the record, I'm Hillary Grant, interim CAO, presenting tonight on behalf of the Department of Community Development. On April 9th, Council approved a new special events policy. The special events policy includes a list of organizations and the cost of in-kind services the town has agreed to provide to them in support of long-standing community events. Lunenburg's Royal Canadian Legion Branch Number 23 has found that the in-kind services provided by the town under this policy is not enough to cover their road closures for both the Battle of Atlantic ceremony and the Remembrance Day ceremony. As such, they have requested additional in-kind support. Council has many options to consider. First, the special events policy allows council to waive fees for in-kind services. The Director of Finance has advised the $833.75 can be accommodated in the town's budget. However, while the Legion's is a modest request, the town cannot accommodate these types of requests ad infinitum, and approving this request may set a precedent or expectation among other groups that council will do the same for them time and time again. Another option would be to amend the language of the special events policy so the Legion could access their allowance already provided under the policy right away, eliminating their current service fee. If nothing else, this would give the Legion time to adjust to the new policy. An alternative not included under this memo would be to consider this application under the town's community grants program, even though the deadline has passed to apply. This is a competitive grant program, but it does include over $10,000 to support community groups like the Legion. Other community groups apply for in-kind traffic control under this program. Directing staff to consider the Legion's request under the community grants program would allow council to review all the requests for traffic services together at one time and decide how to proceed. The community grants applications are tentatively scheduled to come before council for award in June. A motion to consider an application from the Legion under the community grants program could be made alongside an amendment to the special events policy, providing immediate relief for the Legion and keeping the doors to increased funding open without setting a precedent or impacting the town's budget structure. Thank you, and I look forward to receiving council's direction on this matter.
Thank you, Hillary. Any questions from the floor? So there's a motion or a recommendation in front of us. All I can say is whatever we do as a recommendation, I think we have to do it that the Legion doesn't have to pay for either time they have to close the street. So if it's to move it to the grant process in June and do it that way, I'm fine with that. But I think it would be a foolish thing to make the Legion pay to close the streets down for a public ceremony, because it really is a community event. So so by moving this motion, we in essence do that.
Through the chair, if you would like the Legion to be guaranteed the money that they're requesting under the community grants program, a motion should be made to that effect tonight, as it is a competitive grant program.
So as you know, I can't make a motion. Is anyone willing to make a motion?
I would make that motion that we see the Legion looked after in the grant program.
So moved by Councillor Moser, seconded by Councillor Duggan. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Motion carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to 10.4, which is the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal. There's a recommendation in front of us, but before we get to the recommendation, I will get Tyson to give his report. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a couple of recommendations associated with the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal project. The first is that council increase the budget for the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal to $496,000, and that funding for the project will be $309,335 from the surplus asset reinvestment reserve and $186,665 from the municipal capital growth program grants. And the second recommendation with this report is that council award the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal tender to Ground Force Property Services for the amount of $400,805.94 plus the HST. So a little bit of background on the project. So we're intending to replace the existing sidewalk along Green Street from Victoria Road up to High Street near the hospital. It would be widening the sidewalk from the existing 4 feet to 5 feet to improve accessibility and also incorporate the tactile warning strip crossings, which again are in accordance with accessibility. The total length of the sidewalk is 660 meters that's being replaced, and there would be landscaping and street reinstatements associated with the areas that are disturbed. Within the 24-25 town capital budget, the Green Street Sidewalk Renewal is budgeted for $400,000, including the net HST, and this also includes the engineering design as well as the civil work covered by this tender. You'll recall this same project was included in the 23-24 town capital budget with an approved amount of $325,000. Back at July 11th, 2023, council deferred the project and directed staff to include it in the 24-25 budget, which is where we're at now. In terms of the tender itself, it closed on February 20 of this year and has validity for 90 days. So we're coming towards the end of that period now. We received 2 tenders that you can see in the table. Ground Force Property Services was the low bid there. In terms of the project itself, replacing the aged condition of the existing surface, increasing the width of the sidewalk, and improving the ramps are all the key criteria to meet the accessibility standards of today. The extra width as well will fit better with our sidewalk plow, which often runs into trouble on the 4-foot wide sidewalk. I think we're all aware of the importance of this sidewalk in Newtown, connects the hospital to recreation areas, Blue Nose Academy, the commercial area on Victoria. So very important asset for the town and the people. In terms of the financials, as we talked about, this item's within the town capital budget for this year for the value of $400,000 with the allocated funding of $200,000 from surplus asset reinvestment and $200,000 from grants. Prepared a table there showing the engineering costs, the tender and the contingency, which gets us to the revised budget of $496,000 requested in the recommendation. The town has been successful in obtaining the municipal capital growth program grant, where we've been granted up to a maximum of $186,665. The grant funds must be expended by March 31, 2026. For the project to proceed, an additional $109,335 of funding is required, which can be sourced from an increased contribution from the surplus asset reinvestment reserve. That concludes my report, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to address them.
Thank you, Tyson. Any questions from council? Councillor Moser.
Oh, thank you, Worship. Well, once again, we're way over budget on on one of these projects that we have. And I know I used to always suggest heavily that, we do have a public works staff that's very capable of doing this work on their, internally. And it can be a substantial savings to us at the boot. So, I would love to see our own crew do this work, and perhaps we may even come in under budget. And even if it would take, a 2-year period to complete it, that would be, well worth our while, I think, along the way. And unlike Tannery Road, it's, we can section up, section off, we can do a section at a time, and, and work at it when we have, free time. So just like to see what your comment might be on that, Tyson. Possibility of doing that.
So through the chair, I know we've talked about this a number of times, Public Works doing these kinds of projects. I don't disagree that we have the capabilities within our department to do this kind of work. Our department does this work on much smaller areas than 660 meters. And we had a similar discussion about Tannery Road, which again is about 280 meters. We're in a situation with this where, yeah, we would have to bite it off in very small chunks. I don't know whether in 2 years it would be achievable even with the chunks, because the demands that Public Works get, some of them are scheduled, but many of them are not. So sidewalks, once you're committed to it, it's the only sidewalk that really services that part of town. I guess there's Dufferin Street up to where it splits at Dufferin and Maple, but to get to the hospital, it's difficult to leave that for weeks at a time incomplete when we have things like service upgrades to do, line painting, other areas of sidewalk that we have earmarked for this year already. The other aspect with this particular project is the grant. So the grant, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong here, but it allows us to claim 50% of our expenditures, but things like our own labor and equipment are not eligible under the grant. So we're already limiting us potentially with the labor or the removals. I would anticipate it with our crew, our backhoe, our trucks. None of that would be eligible. And then the crew for forming, pouring, finishing, stripping, all the landscape reinstatements. That's not something that we would be able to claim under this grant. And that's why using a contractor here, I appreciate what you're saying about the budget, but the grant might sort of impact that in some ways.
Well, yeah, so basically then material are the only things that we could cost under that grant. So I guess then my question could come back to Lisa, say what is the net effect then, of comparing the two, or which one are we actually getting better value for?
I guess we haven't priced the project out entirely for internal resources. We had budgeted, assuming there was a contractor, just to the size of the project. But I would say at this particular point, and with all those points that Tyson has brought up about, you know, that it's such a main thoroughfare and that there would be real difficulties for people, especially people who have accessibility issues or accessing the hospital, to have that project out there. I think it's the value, and with the added grant, it is worthwhile moving forward rather than having that in pieces.
Thank you. Any other questions, Councillor Sanford?
I just want to go back, and hindsight's 2020, and I think we had this conversation a couple of years ago when we were talking about Tannery Road and the possibility of, you know, having our own folks do it in-house and the money we would save and so on. And I think I was the one that was advocating for it to be done in-house, but in the course of the conversations, I think at that time, Tyson did similar to what he's just done this evening, in that he's, you know, presented the challenges that would come from staff. And I can remember him saying about, you know, if something happens, then we have to take folks away from working on whatever the initiative is. So, and it wasn't 2 months later when I think we had 3, I don't know whether they were a combination of hurricanes and rainstorms, back to back to back, and we were dealing with floods. And I can remember when we came back at another meeting saying, you know, using that as an example, that if we had have committed to having in-house staff working on the particular initiative, and in that case, I think we were talking about Tannery Road, it would have been a project in process whereby everybody would have been taken away from it to deal with the flooding that had been created from all of the fallout from the rainstorms. So all that to say, I think, you know, nobody knows what the weather's going to be like this summer. But I think that it's in our best interest to contract outside of our staff, our current staff, and hopefully we don't need them as frequently to respond to damage and chaos created from storms. That would be a blessing in disguise, so they could, you know, carry on with the regularly scheduled work. But it's like playing poker, you know, you just don't know what hand you're going to get to deal with, and we have to live with the outcome. So I would be in favor of staying with contracting it out.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? I know coming in tonight, I was definitely leaning heavily towards Councillor Mosier's thoughts, because when I was here previously, town staff did a number of sidewalks and some big jobs, even downtown at the time. They do better, you know, as good a work as contractors a lot of times. They're very skilled. I think they actually, the staff take a lot of pride in that, because nobody sees a water main being fixed or a sewer pipe being fixed, but they actually see the sidewalk when it's done, and they take some pride in that. But after hearing the whole, you know, thing with not being able to put a lot of that under that whole grant process, and I can see us going with the contracting route. So I just want to pass that on. So there is a recommendation in front of us that council increase the budget for Green Street sidewalk renewal to $496,000, and that funding for the project will be $309,335 from the surplus assessment reinvestment reserve and $186,665 from the municipal capital growth program grants. That's a recommendation. Is someone willing to move that? Moved by Councillor Mosier, seconded by Councillor Sanford. Any further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, motion carried. Now, the second recommendation is the council award the Green Street sidewalk renewal tender to Ground Force Property Services for the amount of $400,805.94 plus HST. Is there a recommendation for that? Moved by Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Bertels. Any discussion on that? All those in favor, raise your right hand. All those opposed, thank you very much, folks. I just want to highlight that that's a 50% increase over what you budgeted for this time last year. So that should put some reality into the cost of doing municipal or any kind of infrastructure, whether it's us doing it or whoever's doing it. These costs have definitely skyrocketed over the last few years. So thank you. So we'll move on to 10.5 Watermain Loop, Harbourview, Morash Tender Award. There's a recommendation in front of us that council award the Watermain Loop, Harbourview, Morash tender to Rick Jack Construction Limited for the amount of $195,897.50 plus HST. Before you talk about it, before anyone makes a recommendation, I'll declare a conflict on this because my mom lives on the end of that road. So I'll just leave the chair and pass it over to the deputy mayor.
Okay, we've heard the motion as it stands. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, is there anyone who would like to entertain moving that? Councillor Mosier, may we have a seconder? Councillor Sanford. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Contrary minded, motion is carried. And should I just stay here to? We were, yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so now we're on to number 11, which is notice of motions, information request, council reports. It's sort of a time to go around the table, and if anyone has anything they'd like to add to a future agenda, bring up. Now's your time. So I'll start this time. I'll start to the right. I usually start to the left. So we'll start with Councilor Birtles.
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I do have something I'd like to bring up. As we look, coming up soon is the town's 271st anniversary of its founding. And every time this comes along, I'm reminded that we are one of the very few places in Nova Scotia that does not have its own municipal archive. And being one of the most historic towns in the province, I think that's that really needs to be addressed. So I would like to suggest the easiest way to go about it right now, and at no cost to the town at the moment, I would like to look at the possibility of going through some of the town's documents and items that are not necessary for day-to-day running of the town, and at least get them in a spot where they can be laid out, prepared for conservation, and identified of their importance. I would like to, I'd certainly be happy to work with staff in working on that, and maybe even bring in a couple other expert minds in that matter. And I would like to ask for, if it's possible, to use the currently vacant former Orange Lodge room on the 4th floor of this building as a place to lay out some of these items and keep them from some of the less than safe locations they are currently in. It includes the basement, the attic, the fire hall building, which holds the Angus Walters collection, for example. So I'd just like to see that we can see about going on with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any questions to the Deputy Mayor? I think it's a great idea. Okay, so we just send this back to staff and you guys come back. Okay, thank you very much. I'll go to my left, Councillor Mosier, Councillor Duggan, Councillor Sanford.
All good, thank you.
Okay, and now I have a few things I'd like to bring up. One is I'd like to ask staff to come back to a future meeting with a next sort of steps plan for Blockhouse Hill. This would include the process that we need to take, i.e. does it go back to PAC to discuss for development rules, or, you know, what we need to do along the next steps to get to the next step if we were to proceed. Basically for this council to have most, or if not all, the heavy lifting done so that a future mayor and council coming into these seats would be able to either decide which way they want it to go, but we've already done the majority, or this council more so than me have done the majority of the work on this project. So we should continue and just to find out what the next step phase is by staff. So I'd like to ask staff to come back with sort of a calendar and of events and how to do it and the dates from the quickest it could happen to, you know, how it could happen other ways. So that's one I'd like to ask staff to come back with. And then the second thing I'd like to ask staff to come back with, and this isn't meant to freak anyone out, but I'd like to ask staff to bring back the steps and the procedures needed to possibly have the Blockhouse Hill development once we decide what the development rules in that are for option 2, because we've already decided on option 2, what the steps and procedures would be to put Blockhouse Hill development on a ballot in October at the municipal election for a plebiscite item. We've heard it talked about multiple times by many people around this table and others in the room. So let's just find out what the procedure is and what the next steps are, how it can or cannot be done. And then at least we know what the next process is. So again, I'd like to ask staff to do that if possible. And then lastly, only because I'm running out of loonies and toonies at Stansted and Lead, I'd like staff to come back with a plan for next year's budget, give them lots of time to find a more 2020s version to our metering system, because now that they're being enforced, people need change. And there are much better, simpler, and more modern ways to pay for parking than putting loonies and toonies in a meter that might or might not work. So I just think that to give staff lots of time to research other communities around us within the country that you can actually access on your phone, or because now you need a piggy bank of loonies and toonies if you come in town. So those are the 3 items that I'd like to see staff come back with. And again, I'm not putting any time on any of these. It's just something that I think we need information on that we've all talked about, or at least the first 2 items have been talked about at length. So this is a way to get the rules and the process in place. So that's all I have at this time. Is there anything else under item 11? If not, we are basically a motion to move in camera. Motion by deputy or by Councilor Moser. It's going to be a long time getting over that. And okay, motion to move in camera, and we're going to take a 10-minute recess. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and enjoy the rest of the lovely evening.